In today's video, I'm going to share with you 3 tips for catching more crappies in the spring. And if you stick around to the end of the video, I'll offer a bonus tip as well, so you're definitely going to want to stick around for that. Tip number 1 is all about location. You need to find, on a lake somewhere, the north side of a lake with thick weeds, preferably in shallow water, 10 feet or less. Why the north side of the lake? Well, it's all because in the winter when crappies are in deep basins, like when you ice fish them, or maybe in the south where you don't ice fish them, but they usually go deep in the winter. Then they're going to go to the north side of the lake, which heats up the fastest because of the sun angle. It heats up the fastest, the water temp goes up faster than the water does on the south side of the lake, and that's going to trigger the crappies to head in that direction first. Now don't get me wrong, there will be crappies in other areas of the lake, but most of the crappies are going to try to congregate near warmer water, and that's usually on the north side of the lake, especially if there's weeds there, so look for that. Tip number 2, use a long fishing rod. I use a 7/6, but I think anything from 7 feet to 10 feet is the way to go because you want leverage getting the crappies out of the weeds. This is not typical cast and retrieve fishing. This is not vertical jigging over the edge of the boat. You want a long rod for better casting and better accuracy while you cast and further cast as well. Leverage getting the crappies up and over the weeds is going to be key to getting them out of those tricky weed areas, especially in thick weeds, as the weeds continue to get thicker and thicker and thicker when spring rolls along. If you're a person who bought a crappie rod because they were really popular years ago everybody was saying you've got to get these 4.5, 5 foot crappie rods, and that's pretty much just a joke. 4.5 to 5 foot crappie rods are worthless. Unless you're a little kid, don't buy stuff like that. You want leverage, you want casting accuracy, you want casting distance. There might be times when you need to cast 40 or 50 feet and you just can't get the cast long enough and accurately enough with those short crappie rods. So I know it's nice because they're small and more mobile and it seems like they're easier to use, but the shorter the rod, the more difficult it is actually to cast. And you want leverage, like I said, getting the crappies up and out of the weeds. Don't use small rods, use a longer rod. Mine is 7'6". I would encourage you to go 8, 9, even 10 feet if you can. As a matter of fact, some of the best ways to fish panfish in the weeds is with a cane pole because you can literally lift the fish out of the weeds into your boat. You're not going to have to worry about getting snagged with your bait, the fish wrapping around weeds underneath the water or logs for that matter. Your hookup ratio is really good because you can directly get the fish up and out of the water. There are many benefits to having long fishing rods, especially when you're fishing in weeds. Tip number 3 is all about using a small slip bobber. Now let me go back a little bit. You want to use a bobber when you fish in the weeds, in my opinion, because you can fish in little open pockets of the weeds where you normally can't fish if you're throwing a beetle spin or a crankbait or something else the crappies might go for. You're not casting and retrieving, you're casting and pinpointing these open areas in the weeds that you think the crappies might be congregating to, and you're hoping that they take your bobber down. The reason why I say a small slip bobber is because crappies can be really finicky. If they pull down your bait and they feel resistance, there's a good chance they're going to spit that bait out and you're going to lose the fish. Crappies oftentimes, if you've gone crappie fishing, you may notice this, grab the bait, they pull it down, they go off to the side and they hold on to it, but they're not really committed to it. So you have to wait sometimes 2, 3, 4 seconds for that bobber to really go underneath the water until the fish shows commitment. Then you set the hook. With large bobbers, it's going to be more difficult for you to get hookup ratios with those crappies simply because of the resistance. They're going to feel that resistance, they're going to spit out the bait, they're going to move on to something else. This is the slip bobber I'm using, so let me just put my hand up to it to give you an idea of how small it is. At the most, 3.5, maybe 4 inches long. And when the fish pulls this down, they're not going to notice it as much as a lot of the other bobbers you may use. I also want to use the biggest split shot underneath it as I can. That's also going to help the bobber go down with the least amount of resistance. And as promised, here's my bonus tip. This is from personal experience. This is my opinion. This is not a fact. You want to use any color other than black. I don't know what it is, but if you use a black jig, grub, combination of the two, they don't seem to bite near as well. And I know this because I was on a backwoods lake years ago and there were crappies biting on all these different colors and all these different baits, which means they were active, they were aggressive, and they weren't finicky at the time. I was using a black twister tail with a black jig, they wouldn't touch it. So what that means is for some reason they prefer other colors other than black. Now, if you caught crappies on black lures, please don't comment down below and say that I'm making this up, that I don't know what I'm talking about. But I do know from experience that when I've experimented with other baits, the last color they seem to go for is black. So what color should you use instead of black? I've had the best luck with 4 other colors: white, pink, green, and orange. I don't know why, but those 4 colors are really good. Put that down in the comments below if you've got other colors that work well for you. Obviously silver, some kind of minnow imitation, what they primarily feed on in the weeds. But my experience of those 4 colors of white, pink, green, and orange, I would have to say of those 4, pink works the best. Because there's another time I was using all different colors and then I threw on a pink grub with a minnow, and it was going down like crazy. I was getting hit after hit after hit with the crappies just by switching to that color. It could have been the day, but you usually can't go wrong with those 4 colors, especially pink and especially white. And as we all know, crappies can be really fun to catch, but they can also be super difficult to catch, especially after the spring. The spring is the easiest time because they're congregated near the weeds to spawn, but after that is when it becomes more difficult because they're more spread out and they go into deeper water generally. Because of that, I create a video right here which is going to show you how to catch crappies all summer long, and the best part is you don't need a fishing locator to find the crappies if you use this strategy I show you in this video right here. Stay tuned to another video next week. Thanks for supporting the channel. I'll see you again next time.